The instructions say use Microsoft Excel 2010 to complete all activities in this project, and all calculations must be done using Excel formulas or functions, and using no other method of calculation. That includes hand calculators and also the calculator found in Windows. I'll be able to make sure you used Excel to do your calculations by clicking on the cells and looking at the underlying values. Okay, if it just displays a number here in the formula bar instead of a formula or function, of course I can tell that you used a head calculator or some other calculator. Step 1 is to open the Academic Alliance workbook, and step 2 is to save the file. We're going to skip over that for the interest of time and look at step 3. On the sales worksheet, modify the company name, which is in cell A1, to Data Services by your name. You can see that the name Academic Alliance Data Services is contained in A1. Even though it sort of spills over to the adjacent cells, it's all actually within A1. We can change this title by going up to the formula bar and deleting Academic Alliance and that extra space there. And now we're left with Data Services. We need it to say Data Services by your name, so let's go ahead and enter that. And press enter when you're done. And step 4 says on the sales worksheet, enter the net sales totals in cells F5 through F7 and label the column net sales. So we're going to start here in cell F4, and we're going to label the column net sales. And we'll press enter. Net is really another word for total, by the way. And we want the net sales totals for each city. So here are our cities: Miami, Orlando, and Tallahassee. And we need the total, or the net, for the 4 quarters for each city. And so we need to go to the Home tab. And on the Home tab, in the Editing group, there's the Auto Sum button. And we can click on that. And Auto Sum first looks above for numbers to sum, and when it finds nothing, then it will look to the left. These are the numbers that it wants to sum. We can verify that they're correct. Yes, we want these 4 quarters summed. And so we'll press enter. Okay. And I'm going to zoom in down here on my zoom slider so that you can see the numbers a little bit better. Alright. Now, we want to do the same thing for the Orlando and Tallahassee rows as well. Your book informed you that there's a quick way to do this. We could just click Auto Sum each time, but there's an even quicker way to do that. We can click on cell F5 and look at the fill handle, which is this small black square down here at the bottom right corner, the fill handle. We can mouse over it, and when we're right over it, our mouse becomes a crosshair. It changes from this thicker plus sign to a crosshair. We can click and drag down using that fill handle to cells F6 and F7. And what that did is it copied the formula down to the next cells, and it used the numbers in the next row. So for instance, we could click on cell F6 and look here in the formula bar, and we can see that this number is the sum of cells B6 through E6. This cell F5 is the sum of B5 through E5. Okay, and this final one, F7, is the sum of B7 through E7. And now we move on to step 5, which says, on the sales worksheet, enter the average net sales in cells H5 through H7 for each city, and label the column average sales. So let's do that first. Let's label the column here right in line with the quarter titles and net sales, average sales. And we'll press enter. The directions again say enter the average net sales for each city. So we want to take the average of the 4 quarters for each city. We're not going to include the net sales because, like I said before, net sales is another word for total. When you're taking an average, you don't include the total, okay, in the average. That would be like saying, what's the average of 5 and 4 and 5 again and 6. You can see the average is 5. Now, the total of these numbers would be 20, but we wouldn't use the total of these numbers in the average. Okay, I'm going to clear that out. Alright, so let's put our mouse in cell H5 by clicking on it, and we're going to go to the Home tab and the Editing group, and we're going to look at the Auto Sum button, but we're not going to click on it. We're going to click on the small drop down arrow right beside the Auto Sum button, and we're going to choose Average. Now you can see when we click on Average, it again shows us which numbers it would like to average, and you can see that it's including net sales and also the blank column G here, and that's not what we want. Remember, we want quarters 1 through 4. This is a very common mistake that students make. They forget to change the numbers in the average from the default to just quarters 1 through 4. So we can see that the formula says average of B5 through G5. We need to have that say B5 through E5 instead of G5. So we can simply type E instead of G. It doesn't have to be capitalized. And we can press enter, and there we have the average of these 4 quarters. You can tell at a glance that 40,000 is about the average of these 4 numbers. And just like we did with net sales, we can use the fill handle. Remember, it's that square at the bottom right. When we are right over it, we see our cursor change from this big cross to this small plus sign, and we click and drag down click and drag down to the 6th and 7th row for Orlando and Tallahassee. And if you like, of course, you can check and make sure that each of your underlying formulas is correct. For H6, we've got the average of B6 through E6. That's exactly what we need. And for H7, we've got the average of B7 through E7. And now moving on to step 6, it says create a total for each quarter, the net sales, and the average sales, and label the row total sales. So it's telling us create a total for each quarter, 1 through 4, the net sales, and the average sales. Label the row total sales. So we're going to put this in row 8, and we'll put total sales in A8. And we can press enter, and now let's move to cell B8, and we can use the auto sum button. Remember, with the auto sum button, Excel first looks above for numbers to sum, and then if there are none, it looks over to the left. We have numbers above, and we can see that it wants to sum B5 through B7, and that's exactly what we want. So we'll press enter. And again, we can click on cell B8 and use the fill handle to drag across all the way over to average sales. And again, we can click on each number and check to make sure it's summing the correct items. We were instructed earlier to keep column G blank, so let's just click on G8 that currently has a 0, and we can press backspace, and then we can press escape to, oops, I'm sorry, it's delete, I'm sorry. We'll press delete, there we go, to get rid of that 0 and get rid of the underlying function. And now step 7, format the sales worksheet to meet the following guidelines. Merge and center cells A1 through H1. So to do that, we click on A1 and then we can drag over to H1. This is of course different from using the fill handle. We just click right in the center of the cell and drag right from the center of the cell. We don't use the fill handle. Okay, our cursor stays that thick cross or plus sign throughout, and drag over to H1. Then we're simply going to click the Merge and Center button that's on the Home tab, Alignment Group, and here's Merge and Center. And it tells us to do the same for A2 through H2. A2 through H2, merge and center there. It tells us to center the column headings for quarters 1 through 4 and the net sales on the average sales. So we could select this range, or you can also just click on the number 4 heading to select the whole row, and we're not going to use merge and center this time. Instead, we're going to just stick on the Home tab, Alignment Group, and just the regular old center button that we've seen in Word.